What's up, Jets fans, and welcome to a special 2023 New York Jets schedule reaction episode of Jet Nation Live. We are your hosts, Dylan Tereman and Glenn Naughton. I think if you've been scrolling on Twitter throughout most of the day, you've seen at least 10 of the games that were already on the Jets schedule. The entire thing has been confirmed now. I believe it was Brian Costello of the New York Post about an hour ago who broke the whole thing, and now they are doing the entire thing as a national televised event. Glenn, how we doing? I know we've gotten a quick peek at the schedule, but we'll dig into it. How we doing tonight?
Doing good. I know a lot of people make a big deal out of schedule day. I mean, it's interesting to me from a travel perspective, and maybe sort of a couple little if there's anything crazy here and there. But really, at the end of the day, it's win your games. But you do you want to see how it plays out. Are you expecting the schedule to get for the schedule to be tough early and soften up later? Which is it's fun to talk about and think about now, but none of that matters because really, you might say, oh, here's these three really tough teams early on, and then a couple of them don't have their quarterback that week, and another one doesn't have their best running back, and all of a sudden it's not that tough. So, or not as tough, I should say. So it's fun to talk about, look at. I don't get too crazy about it, but there is some value to it, and it's definitely worth the conversation.
Yeah, I'm glad you said miles and trips and road trips and things of that sort because it triggered my brain back to a graphic I saw, I believe it was yesterday, that the Jets have the seventh fewest miles traveled in the 2023 regular season, as well as the second fewest time zones. So when I think of those two things, I think we're staying home. The farthest out west we go is Las Vegas and Denver, I believe, as it currently stands. So I don't think this is a terribly tough schedule. We've known the opponents for however long. Since the day the season ended, we've known all the opponents. It was just piecing them in the right order. You can have that Colin Cowherd type mentality to it and say that the first 4 months of the Jets schedule is a doozy and that it's good night for Aaron Rodgers and the Jets in the first month. And I think that's the worst attitude you could possibly have.
That guy's such an idiot.
Yeah, exactly. I feel like you shouldn't have that type of mentality, but
he's one of those. No, but he's one of those people. There's a few people in sports media where you feel like these people got lucky and that like they got in early before you had to be good at it to do it. Like you just had to sort of be in the right position or maybe know the right person or whatever. But and I get that they have to say crazy stuff to get people to listen, to get the clicks and the eyeballs and all that. But I just feel like you should be able to do that with a platform that size by just saying intelligent things. But they rarely take that route. All these shock jock whatevers. Cowherd's a moron. He used to be pretty good at picking games, if I'm not mistaken. But other than that, he's a tough listen. So I mean, the only reason I see anything about him is when he says something stupid enough that it makes it to my feed and then I hear it. But other than that, like I would never purposely listen to the guy.
Yeah, I believe the way it found its way to my timeline was one of the Jets, Twitter guys quote tweeting it with a even worse take that he had when he asked where he could purchase his 2020 AFC Championship tickets with Adam Gase and Sam Darnold at the helm.
Exactly,
so,
which he now says was sarcastic. I was being sarcastic.
Of course,
you meant it, and you're a moron. You thought Adam Gase was Vince Lombardi,
right? Yeah, and like you said, that's their personalities.
Primetime games. I love it. What do you think of that, real quick, before we get into the specific games? What do you think of the number of primetime games, Dylan?
So yeah, I put his comment up. We'll put it back up. I think the primetime games, as a viewer, it's kind of crappy. You wait all day for the game to happen, and for our perspective, we do things right after the game, post game reactions and articles and whatnot. So we're up a little bit later, and for you overseas, you're probably watching the sunrise with most of these games.
1:15 kickoff on these games.
Oh, geez. So, yeah, by the time you go to sleep on, like, say, Monday Night Football, we'll start right there with the Buffalo Bills. If they win that game, the hype that you're going to have at 4:30 in the morning, you're going to just pour a cup of coffee and watch this or something stronger and watch the sun come up. So I'm kind of concerned from the viewership standpoint. I can stay awake. It's not that big a deal. But I noticed that they do have back-to-back primetime games, which makes it a short week. They have a Monday night against the Chargers and then a Sunday night against the Las Vegas Raiders. But other than that, I didn't think this was out of the norm. We've heard they were going to get the maximum amount or potentially right up to the maximum amount, and they got it. They got all 5 with a special televised game on Black Friday. My tweet that I put out said 6 primetime games, and I had 5 comments that said it's 5. Black Friday doesn't count.
Right.
I apologize. When we're the only game on TV, I consider that, it's nationally televised or
It's not
national
prime time
appearance,
on your clock, but
but it's technically
prime, it's the
not
national
prime.
audience.
Right, exactly. So we have 5, and Buffalo Monday Night Football, which I think is going to be rocking. Kansas City on Sunday night, week 4, which is home. We got lucky, a lot of home games. Monday night against the Chargers, Sunday night, that is in Las Vegas. And then the final one is Cleveland on Thursday night, that is in Cleveland. So to me, I like those. They're good matchups. They're strong matchups. The first 2 just pull ratings, Jets, Bills, and Jets Chiefs. I think the Jets Chargers is a really sneaky good matchup. I'm not too keen on the Vegas Raiders. I think Jimmy Garoppolo is meh, so that kind of matchup doesn't really shine to me. And then Cleveland, it's kind of a wild card, so they could be really good at Week 17 and be fighting for a playoff spot. And obviously
on Watson, doesn't it?
Right, Watson is
they
the
got
X
some
factor.
pass catchers, man. They've got some receivers.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, they have one of ours, and so it'll definitely be interesting. What are your thoughts on the primetime games? Are you a fan? I know we just talked about your sleep schedule, but other than that,
I'm never a huge fan of them because, and it's not just the 1 a.m. kickoffs, which is a big enough hassle. I hate waiting through the early games. I hate it. Monday nights, like watching all the games Sunday, I hate it. So it's nice that they're viewed now as a team worth having the whole country watch. But man, to me, nothing better than a 1 o'clock game. I mean, that's bad enough. I used to when I lived in New York, I used to be like, man, those lucky, those fans in California get, 10 a.m. start. You get to roll out of bed and turn on your TV and the game's on. Like, what's better than that? And now I'm the complete opposite. I have like a full day of activity before games start at 6 p.m. And that's on a 1 o'clock game. So, 1 a.m. kickoffs are no fun. At least now I have more flexibility in my schedule. It used to be brutal when I was active duty, and they'd get I remember the Geno Sunday night game in Atlanta. The worst were the losses though. Like get up at 1 a.m. or get up to watch a game at 1, ends by 4:30. Got to get up for work in an hour and a half, and they lost the game, so I'm miserable. And not a lot of that this time though. Hopefully we're talking winning record in all scenarios across all every possible schedule layout. Hopefully they're coming away with a winning record, and the primetime games. I look at the schedule, I'm thinking 17-0. I don't know how you feel, Dylan. I think it plays out nicely. The roadmap is there. Just, win them all, and just it's that simple.
I was gonna say, with Aaron Rodgers, every game is a W. No, it's not that easy, obviously, and you can take that Colin Cowherd approach of the tough schedule in the beginning of the season, but I think that's kind of a repeat of last year. 0-8, 1-8, 1-9, 0-9, whatever Brady Quinn said in the beginning of last season. Like that is what's going to be said again. Even though we have Aaron Rodgers, because we haven't proven anything yet. And I understand that. We're not on the field. We're not ready to, show the world everything we have. These videos of Aaron Rodgers thrown in practice, jerseys is all, hype and everything for the fans, but no one outside the fandom kind of believes in the Jets right now. So I think maybe come August when joint practices roll around and we're getting reports that, the Jets are looking really good against these other teams potentially, then the narrative will shift. But yeah, everybody's going to look at these first 6 games, and I'll go through them quick. Buffalo, Dallas, New England, KC, Denver, Philly, leading up to the bye, and they're already asking, well, what's the record going to be at the bye week? Is it going to be 3-3 or 2-4? And I'm like, I don't know. Like, we can't put the cart before the horse here. Like, we have Buffalo. We know they're the opponent week 1. Now we have many, many months to plan for Buffalo and kick their ass. Like, we have to do it. Like, we beat them once last year.
We're gonna get into the draft classes in a minute, but Buffalo did all right for themselves.
Yes, we will certainly get
already very talented, and they did all right. But I mean, listen, you split with those guys last year, competitive in the loss. And that was with bad quarterbacks. That's the thing I keep trying to stress to people is that this team, no, they didn't make the playoffs, but they were in the playoffs late in the year. and they threw like 11 touchdowns as a team. I mean, it's that like there's literally a chance they can almost triple their touchdown production this year. Like if you can do that, and you were in the playoff hunt in December last year. I know the schedule is tougher. I get that, but my God, like this team couldn't buy a touchdown last year, and they were in it late, and now we've got a quarterback who's had tremendous success with this OC, and I expect points. Listen, I expect points, and with the depth on this D line, that's why I did, as surprised as we were, that's why I understood and liked the Will McDonald pick, because he's a guy that's going to allow you to. It's another set of fresh legs that hopefully, we don't know what's going to happen with these guys, but if he plays as we project him, he's another guy with fresh legs who can get to the quarterback, and the Jets have a lot of those now.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I was just going to say, could you imagine if Will McDonald in week 1 under the bright lights in the first game does like a Jermaine Johnson type sack on Josh Allen when he contained and got out to the outside and sacked him on that first down, which was a pivotal play. And like
that was a huge play.
People don't realize that shut down the entire drive. So yeah, I think that could be, the breakout game for Will McDonald. Do it right under the lights. But yeah, I mean, I don't want to ask you the question, but looking at those 6 games, how do you feel going into that bye week? Like, I mean, I think we could take care of Buffalo. I think we can keep up with Dallas. I know they're kind of a high potent offense, but they lost Zeke. They've added some nice pieces, and I think their defense is very good. But then you have New England early, which I like at home. Kansas City, which you get at home, which is another little sweetener because it's a prime time and it's at home. If you had to go to Arrowhead, that's a whole different environment. We've already won in Denver last year. Obviously, kind of beat PTSD with Breece Hall and Elijah Vera Tucker. We'll see how they manage ththose guys that game. And then they come back home to play Philly. So, like, I don't know. I don't want to sound like a homer or optimistic, but 5-2 or 4-2 doesn't sound like stupid, right?
That's where I'm at looking at it.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you can't pick anyone to beat the Eagles right now with that season they just had and that draft they just had. But Jesus, like they're like 13-0 against the Jets lifetime. Like you would expect the Jets got to beat them at some point. I don't know if this is that point. I think Philly is arguably, I mean, they're not they are a top 2 team right now. However, that when you have Aaron Rodgers and you have edge rushers, like the Jets have the talent to beat anyone. Now it's going to be about execution. But I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, all right, if we're going to play that game where we try to guess what happens, I would say 4-2. I think Dak is beatable. Somebody said what? I forget what it was. I heard somebody say a stat on Dak the other day. Like he's got like 39 interceptions in his last 42 starts or something like that.
Wow.
Like, and I may be way off, but they were over a very large sample size. He throws about a pick a game, which you don't really expect for a guy that makes the type of money he does. But yeah, I mean, Dak beatable. I would love to go to that game. The Pats. I mean, look, you lost to the Pats twice last year by a damn, fluke. I mean, and that's the thing with the Pats. Like their record last year wasn't that good, and the Jets handed them 2 wins. So really, the Patriots not a good football team. So 4-2 to me seems absolutely fine. I think the wild card is Denver. How do they play under Peyton? Does Russell Wilson turn things around? Because Russell Wilson playing like the Russell Wilson of old makes them a completely different football team. So that's the X factor. I would say I'm happy. I would say 3-2. I'd feel pretty confident, and Denver the X factor between 4-2 and 3-3.
Yeah, when I said 4-2, I was circling Kansas City and Philadelphia. Obviously, they're the Super Bowl teams from last year, so obviously I'm not going to say the Jets should or could. I mean, they can win, but they aren't.
That's the thing. That's the difference with this Jets team is that there's no one on their schedule that you would be shocked if they beat.
Nope.
That's the thing. Like you can look at it and say, I can see them losing that game, but if they win, you're like, yeah, I can see that too.
Yeah, I remember
years past, you're like, oh, they're going to have to shock the world and everything's going to have to go perfect and Zach Wilson's going to have to play the best game of his life and nobody can make mistakes. It's not like that now. Now it's like, all right, well, they're good enough to beat them. It's do they out execute them?
Yeah, and I don't remember what our exact predictions were entering the week 9 matchup against the Bills right before our bye week last season. But we both were just saying like, all right, 5-4 at the bye, we'll get there. We'll see what happens. Hopefully they don't put their tail between their legs, and like they shut us up real quick. I know it was only a 20-17 victory, but like you said, that's with the quarterback play we had last year. And I understand the quarterbacks that we faced weren't always the top guy on their respective teams, but when you factor in all these things and you look at the schedule, nobody's guaranteed to play at full strength. Not even week 1 against the Bills. Anything can happen. So I hate that argument that the Jets played soft quarterbacks, and your tweet alluding to the points per game really didn't make a difference when you're holding them to under 20 points per game. And that got
starters, backups, everybody was under 20 a game.
And that got me thinking what we were talking about offline is 27 was the highest amount of points the Jets let up in a loss last year. Minnesota and Cincinnati. The year prior, they let up 9 games of 27 or more points on defense. So when you couple that with Aaron Rodgers and a strong-ass defense, which we can get into Mina Kimes' comments and how she thinks it's a sustainable defense, sky's the limit, man. Like, I'm looking at 10, 11, 12 wins. None of these teams, like, scare me. Kansas City scares me because Patrick Mahomes is, the next Aaron Rodgers in terms of his ability.
They're just so good across the board.
Right,
Philly, like 1 through 53, might be the best team in the NFL.
Certainly, yeah. I mean, it's crazy.
That draft they just had.
Yeah.
I mean, Howie Roseman, credit to him. I'm just going to draft everybody from Georgia. Like,
just put all the dogs in the birdhouse, as my friend says. Yep.
They beat the snot out of everybody they play on Saturdays. So let's just let them do it at the next level on Sundays. Credit to him.
Championship mentality, easy chemistry with the rest of the defense. They have like 5/11ths of the defense already established. And they got Keely Ringo at pick like 105. Just
he's an interesting one, though. The problem is, with the amount of driving I do, I listen to a million different draft podcasts, so I forget which ones say what. And I can't remember which one. It was sort of mid-season, and somebody was like, all the shows I listen to are either, former execs, former GMs, former scouts, TDN, when they had their guys in place, and Chris Schubert obviously does the show now. But one of them was saying, they were like, Keely Ringo, like, he looks like a safety to me. I don't, and he started to fall on a lot of mocks. Like early in the year, he was like top 15 guy. And then as the season went on, he dropped a fair bit. I don't think he dropped as far as he actually dropped in real life. But I think a lot of people view him as, not really a corner, but who cares if you get a ball hawk safety in Keely Ringo? Like the Eagles are just, and then they traded for Swift.
Another Bulldog.
It's like, man, we didn't draft enough Bulldogs. Let's trade for one. So that's not a bad idea by Howie.
Yeah, and to go along with your Keely Ringo to safety point, that could be an option for him. They lost Chauncey Gardner-Johnson in free agency to the Detroit Lions, so anything can happen. Like when they, like we talk about all the time with offensive line, putting your best 5 on the field. That's kind of what you do in your secondary. You have like your guys that do this and that, but when you have like a nickel defense, your slot corner and your safety can kind of be interchangeable if you have those types of players with the ball skills that they have. And I think the Jets are trying to emulate something similar with their back end. They have very versatile pieces, and I think Chuck Clark is going to be a starter in this defense. So you think about him and Whitehead together, they on paper look like the same mold, but they kind of do a little bit of everything. And I know Chuck Clark doesn't do all of the free safety stuff, and neither does Whitehead, but it's just interesting to see how defenses are kind of morphing their versatility when it comes to their defensive backs as well. The rest of this schedule, I mean, coming out of the bye, you have the Giants. That's a fun one. Chargers, Vegas. I mean, the trip to Vegas is going to be a hoot for the Jets and all their fans. I mean, I think the goal is to play there twice, obviously, because the Super Bowl is there. So if the Jets fans can make it out there twice, that would just be something pretty special. What do you think about those back-to-back primetime games with the Chargers and the Raiders?
Yeah, I mean, the Chargers obviously scare you a little bit more. They have some real weapons, obviously an elite quarterback. But the Raiders don't worry you as much. But I'll tell you what, saying I'd like to get out to Dallas, I think I'd really rather get out to Vegas like that, just for that stadium. Vegas itself, the Strip, like I did that years ago for a concert. I'm old, man. I was like, turn all this music down. It's too bright. Why is it? Why? I'm walking down the Strip. Why is it so loud? But yeah, I was happy to give me a couple drinks. I don't need to sit at the bar and pay $50 a drink. Just just have a couple in the hotel room. But the stadium itself, I'd love to go check out the stadium. But same with Dallas. That's that would be either of those places would be incredible.
Yeah, I didn't want to make it come off like I wanted the Jets to play in Los Angeles as well. But could you imagine the Los Angeles, Las Vegas road trip? Say you were able to come out to, go overseas and you went to both, because those are some of the most beautiful stadiums that the NFL has just built, SoFi and Allegiant Stadium.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm excited for those games. The back-to-back prime time is kind of whatever. It's a short week, which I think people need to monitor. We have a couple short weeks. Speaking of a short week, we have another one, Buffalo and then Miami on Black Friday. So we play the Bills, and then we have a short week. Both times we play them. Obviously, week 1 on Monday night, and now week 11, and then entering a Black Friday. So those two divisional games, followed by Atlanta, Houston, and then you have Miami again. What do you think about that stretch? I think, we'll kind of see what the Jets are at that point. That's week 11. We'll know what the Jets are pretty much going to be or are trending to be. So I think that's a good stretch. I mean, obviously Buffalo, Miami back-to-back is never fun. But, I mean, I look at what Rodgers did to Miami last year, and he was throwing some of his best balls on Christmas Day against the Dolphins last year, late in the season. Yeah. So I'm excited for that. And then you have, I don't want to say cupcake games, but games that you should think the Jets will be favored, if not heavily favored, in Atlanta and Houston, both at home, which only helps. So what do you think about those couple games in that stretch there?
Again, winnable games. You don't like the short week, but it's going to happen. Really, in general, you look at what some other teams are having to put up with, and the Jets got it pretty easy. I don't know if you saw. I didn't see the full schedule. I just saw a tweet that the Giants have 7 road games in 9 weeks at one point.
Yeah, it's tough.
And 2 game and back-to-back games out west, something like that.
Yeah, so, and I believe they go to London too. So it's tough. Yeah. So and they're a good team last year, and that's kind of what happens. The schedule kind of influxes every year based on who the new trending teams are. I mean, I look at even Detroit. They got the first game of the season against Kansas City, and I know some people are saying, well, it doesn't matter ratings, and you can stick any team against the Chiefs first game. People are going to be starving for football. But, I mean, people think the Lions are going to be something this year. So you kind of see it reflected
is that
in the
season opener? Is Kansas
City Detroit in Kansas City Thursday night?
Why did I think it was New England? Somebody said New England the other day. I don't know. Either way.
No, I believe it's Detroit.
That might have been fake. I think I saw New England, Philly somewhere.
Oh, okay.
But that could be BS. That was a tweet I saw yesterday, I think.
Speaking of New England, we end the season with them. And I obviously know the track record with the Jets has been pretty rough for the past 7 or 8 years, not winning a damn game against them. But what do you think this year, the stretch, Washington, Cleveland, New England to end, obviously 2 road games, but fairly easy opponents? I know Cleveland we talked about as a wild card, but if all things are going smoothly, we could potentially chalk these up as 2 out of 3, if not 3 out of 3 wins if we're really rolling, right?
I mean, that's the thing. I'm looking at this this is a tough one, that's a tough one, and I'm thinking these shouldn't be. You didn't just trade for Aaron Rodgers so that, Cleveland might be a tough matchup. No, you just got Aaron Rodgers. These are the games you're supposed to win. You're supposed to win most of them when you've got him. New England, the final week of the season, in a perfect world, that's Zach Wilson getting a chance to get on the field and get a little bit of revenge for last year's embarrassing loss and show that maybe he has something, to be a quarterback in the NFL.
Zach Wilson fans love you right now.
That's perfect world. Well, listen, it's fans are weird, man. There are you cannot convince me that there are not fans out there rooting against Mekhi Becton and Zach Wilson, Jets fans.
Oh, it's so silly. Jets fans actively doing it.
Zach Wilson and Mekhi Becton get. You would think they played for the Patriots dynasty. The way Jets fans talk about them.
I don't care how much I don't like a player. As soon as they put on the jersey, I root for them. Yeah, exactly. I don't care how much I dislike the player. Like you said, I believe with Jason Taylor. Yeah, you didn't like him, but he put on the jersey, and you're like, all right, cool. All right, he's a Jet.
I wasn't cool. I was I'm not going to root against him, but damn it, I'm not going to cheer that loud when he does something well. But yeah,
you're also
no,
not going to root for him
exactly.
to hurt his body and be out for a significant amount of time. So like, and I
Right.
think it's a gross line that these fans try to cross. Like, we're fans of this team. We're
I
not
know.
trying to like diminish the
And
players or
and the
the
thing, like
team.
the thing with Becton, I know we're getting off target here a little bit, but I don't care
Mhm.
because it's important. Like
Yeah.
the thing with Becton, even if you take at least in my view, like if you take the negative aspect, oh, he let himself put on too much weight, it messed up his rehab. Okay, but can we just say perhaps, like maybe he's a young guy who made a mistake and maybe has done some growing up since having a child
Exactly.
and
Yep.
has gotten his head on straight. Like, and I said the other day, I did a short video on him, like to the critics, like he can do no right because he'll either not get in shape and he's lazy, but he does the opposite. He gets in shape, and now the haters are saying, well, he's greedy. He's got a contract coming, so he's getting in shape. Okay,
Yeah.
so no matter what he does, you're going to rip the guy. So at
Right.
least he's doing the right thing for himself, for the team, and even if having a kid and wanting money is his motivation. Listen, one thing that we've seen shift over the last sort of 10, 15 years, a couple things really in the pro game, like players' willingness to anoint themselves the best in the league at their position. That didn't used to be a
Mhm.
thing, by the way. I know I'm a
Right.
lot older
Yeah.
than you. Players used to like respectfully say things like, it's nice to have my name mentioned in the conversation. It's an honor to be considered in the same class as those guys.
Sure.
Lots of players used to say. Now they're like, who's the best? They're like, me, duh. Like
Yeah.
that's a culture change. And the what's the public, like the instant um like
Gratification.
not gratification. I'm brain farting. The public, like making it clear that this is about the money. You see guys
Oh
like
yeah.
in year
Yeah.
one or two, like a guy makes a play. Oh yeah, get the bag, go get your money, go get your money. Like
Yes.
in years past, it was like, of course, money was important, but winning
Hmm.
was important enough that that's what you celebrated, like making a play to win. But a
Right.
lot of times you see, and it's not always the players. A lot of times it's their teammates. You know, like you see a guy make a play, and instead of like great play, won us the game, it's like, yeah, get paid. So those
Sure.
are like two huge shifts you've seen. So who cares if Mekhi Becton wants to get paid and he's getting in shape and getting ready to play well because of it? That's what a lot of these guys are doing. A lot
Yeah.
of pro athletes do it because of the money. Not like newsflash. Not every football player, and I'm not saying this applies to Mekhi Becton. Not every pro athlete loves the game they play. You know
Right.
what I mean? Willie Colon used to say, like, some people play this game because they love the game, and some people play because it's a job. And
Yep.
they look at it the same way the dude working at Walmart, working the cashier, looks at it. I hate doing this, but I got to pay my damn bills. You know,
Exactly.
and
And I think
obviously,
that's why the Jets front office harps on that so much. They want people that live, eat, breathe football because that is not every single prospect coming out of the draft. And they need to find out through interviews who takes that x-ray and has that dog in them. You know what I mean? Like they want to find out who has that football, like willing to die on the field. I don't want to quote Jamal Adams there, but you know what I mean? That type of mentality is what they look
right,
for. And that's
guys,
not every prospect.
it's
And
not.
going back to Mekhi, players are motivated in many, many different ways, whether it is
Yep.
the money or family base. Like he just had a child. Who knows? Maybe he looked that baby in the face and was like, I got to make something for this
You
kid,
don't
like
know what that does to people.
exactly,
You don't know what that does to a man.
exactly.
I mean,
And
listen,
you,
some guys don't care. Some guys are like,
sure.
"Oh my god, I got to get out of here. There's a baby in the
Yeah.
picture," and they bail. But
Yeah.
some dudes
Anything.
look at
Yeah.
that kid and they're like, "Oh my god, this is my responsibility now. I'm the provider for this human being,"
Yep.
and they turn it around like that. And maybe that's what happened. I don't know what happened. All I know
Exactly.
is the guys lost 50 pounds, and it makes me want to puke that Jets fans have so much hate. And again, as is always the case, or as is often the case, it's a very small group of very loud, angry people.
Hmm.
I sent out a tweet probably a year or so ago, because Becton sent off a couple of tweets, or it might have been when he wore the shirt, where he was clearly getting agitated. He was feeling what people were saying. And I sent out a tweet like, as a Jets fan, do you still view yourself like, do you still support Mekhi Becton, or are you done with him? And it was like 88, 90% still support him. It's just the loud vocal minority that screams how much they hate Mekhi Becton. And I mean, I feel like this happens every, it's not a rare occurrence because so many Jets players get trashed by their own fans. But add Mekhi Becton to the list of Jets players who I want to see dominate, not because he's a Jet, but because of how much garbage he's taken from the fans.
Exactly. And I don't know. Yeah, like you said, it's just assuming so much about his life and his mindset and where he's at. And I remember him tweeting I want to say it was a couple months now at this point, that he was never in a mental state as
Yeah.
positive as this.
Yep.
And to me, I was like, oh my goodness, like this is the type of like, I see the messaging on the wall, whatever type of, moment
Right.
for Mekhi Becton, where he's like coming to his own and he's going to realize like, and that's what you want every player to do. So I feel like it's all, yeah, it's players, people on Twitter that want to hide behind a keyboard and just shout, big bust and you're never going to do anything, or Boomer saying eat your way out of the league. Like I think that's just it's clown stuff.
Man.
It's clown behavior, to be honest. And I'm not even like a big Mekhi fan. Like I love what he does when he's on the field, but like obviously availability is your best ability, and I'm going to critique that. But I'm never going to say I wanted him off the team, and even though he wasn't my choice at tackle, like I'm going to hate him forever. Like if that was the case, I would dislike a lot of the Jets picks. You know what I mean? So it's just it's silly. We have to root for this team, and we got a little bit off track, but I agree. I think Mekhi Becton has been getting the unfair shake.
I can understand being skeptical. I can't understand the vitriol and the hatred.
Yes,
like that's what I can't.
Yeah, to say that he will be hurt, guaranteed, or this and that, and like you said, only playing good to get the money. Like you've already made it up in your mind.
Most guys are playing well to get the money.
That you aren't going to root for this guy anyway. So just can it essentially.
Yeah.
Circling it all the way back to the schedule. I think we talked through it, and we did. We got to 17-0. Like there's maybe 15-2 if you want to just give the Chiefs and the Eagles a bone to chew on. But 17-0 is where we settled. Pretty definitive at this point. Rodgers is going to
break home field locked up by week 15, and you Zach loses the final two.
The only way Rodgers doesn't break the passing yards record and touchdowns record is for that exact reason. They have it locked up way too early. Hey, who knows? The Jets could have the game in hand when Rodgers is at that 60% snap threshold in the middle of the third quarter. You throw Zach Wilson in there, and hey, we got a first-round pick, and we're 17-0. Hey, you never know what can happen.
He would have to sit like 6 games.
It would be way too much Zach Wilson for me.
So they'd have to start 10-0.
Yeah,
that's the thing I'd have to look at. I can't remember if it's percentage of snaps or percentage of games.
I think it's snaps. I could be wrong, but I think it's snaps.
Because if it's snaps, I'd be wanting to see Zach Wilson in a lot of fourth quarters.
Yes. Give me that 20-point lead and, let Zach Wilson run the ball for the rest of the fourth quarter. I think, what was it? I think it was the Packers game. They didn't pass the ball one time in the fourth quarter in that win. So, let's just have that game script on repeat, and we'll get to 17-0. All right, we'll wrap on the schedule. Before we transition into the AFC East draft classes, I did want to mention the Jets made a roster move today. They cut tackle Cedric Ogbuehi. They re-signed him, in April. Minimal 1-year deal, had nothing guaranteed, a little over $100,000. So obviously he's now cut after they bring in Billy Turner and Carter Warren. I don't necessarily think this means anything in the short, immediate for Carter Warren. I just think that they knew that room was a little overloaded, and they had Ogbuehi in case they weren't able to land a tackle that they liked in the draft, similarly to what they did with McGovern. Who knows what happens there? They're kind of loaded at offensive line too, or at interior offensive, So Ogbuehi's cut. Billy Turner is probably your swing tackle, and Carter Warren and Max Mitchell are your developmental guys to back up everybody else. Any thoughts on Ogbuehi getting cut?
Not a surprise. I actually started a thread on the jetnation.com forums yesterday or the day before. Just kind of similar something I think we touched on it a week or two before that, saying who do they keep on the O-line? Having drafted Tippmann and brought McGovern back since adding, a couple of interior linemen through free agency, I think a couple of these guys who they added might not roster because they've got a lot of bodies on the interior. And at tackle, by adding Carter Warren, by expecting Becton back. And I think that, it's going to make some guys expendable who, you thought might be a depth piece, but, who might not make the roster now.
Yeah, I was just looking at the contract that they gave Wes Schweitzer, as I butcher that pronunciation. I believe it was a 1-year deal. Okay, 2 years for $5. So Schweitzer is probably going to stick on the roster. But then I look at other interior guys
cut.
I don't know that right off the top. And that 2 for 5 is just the rough number that was reported, not like the cap hits or anything like that. So you can look that up. But Tristan Colon is the guy that I have my eye on because 1 year, 1.6 million on his deal. I'm sure it's this very low cap hit, and I think he could be the odd man out, even though they just signed him over from Baltimore. So
Right.
I'm not sure exactly how it's going to shake out, but they have tons of offensive linemen that they're going to have to sort through. And I think Abwehi was just the first step in clearing a muddied picture, so to speak.
Yeah, Schweitzer probably stay. I mean, it's not a ton of money, but he's $3 million dead cap hit if you let him go.
Right. Once I saw it was a 2-year deal, I figured it was enough in the year one where you're not going to get rid of him right away.
Yeah, and like I said, I'm not saying that's part of the plan, but maybe they didn't. My thought process was I don't think they expected to have McGovern and Tippmann by the time the season started when they added him. But to be fair, I think it's been a while since they signed him now. But I remember watching and thinking he was a better guard than he was a center. They may not view him as a center.
Schweitzer?
Yeah, so he may just be a backup guard.
Yeah, he could be your swing guard.
Yeah,
and I think it's very rare for a team to carry like a true center-only backup.
Right.
So it's good that
but
Tippmann
I think that's where McGovern. I think McGovern is your center guard.
Right, and Tippmann, they say, can play guard as well. He's played tackle in college or whatever, but I think it's good that you don't have a guy that's like a Dwayne Brown. He's a sole left tackle. We only have him. We don't have a sole left tackle and a sole center. I feel like that makes everything a lot more interchangeable, and that's what Joe Douglas called the hallmark of his interior was versatility. So I think that we're going to see the best five, how it shakes out. But yeah, I like any combination you put out there is really good combination, barring health. Obviously, I feel like that doesn't need to be said anymore. But all right, we can transition now back to a little bit of draft talk. We're going to go over all the AFC East draft classes because they were all pretty good. And it makes me a little sad that players that I liked went to teams that I don't like. And now I have to not root for them, but feel like kind of the opposite of like you felt with Jason Taylor. Like, I want them to do well because I was like, oh, this guy was my tight end 1 or 2 coming out of the draft and he's kicking ass. So it's one of those tough positions. But which team do you want to start with? Obviously, we know the Jets draft class pretty in depth here. You want to go Buffalo, Miami, or New England?
Who do you think had the worst class? Let's start there.
Okay, so I think if I had to rank them, the only reason I would put this team last, even though it was the largest class, was because they drafted a kicker and a punter and a couple of guys that I truly had no idea who they were, and that was the New England Patriots.
Okay, let's start there then.
All right. I can read off their class, and then we can.
Sure, go ahead.
We can do it in groups, or we can just read off the whole class and then go.
Yeah, read off the whole class, and then we'll just kind of go through who we like, who we don't.
Cool. So in the first round, they got Christian Gonzalez, cornerback from Oregon. Second round, Keon White, edge from Georgia Tech. Third round, Marte Mapu, linebacker safety from Sacramento State. 3 fourth-round picks, Jake Andrews, the center from Troy. Chad Ryland, the kicker from Maryland, which is the pick that I believe they traded with the Jets to go get. Saidi Sow, offensive guard, Eastern Michigan. And Tony Mafi, offensive guard, UCLA. Keishon Butte in the 6th round, which is quite the slide for Butte, wide receiver out of LSU. Punter Bryce Behringer from Michigan State. Your guy, Demario Douglas, wide receiver, Liberty. And an underrated cornerback, I believe, in the 6th round, Amir Speed from Michigan State. So, I mean, I look at the top 3, Gonzalez, White, and Mapu. And if you cut it there, we'd probably be talking about the Patriots last in the order of good to least. I think it kind of just took a deep nosedive in the 4th round, and that's to be expected. I mean, they're day 3 picks, but I don't know. I can't get up for trading up for a kicker, drafting a punter. They drafted the kicker in the top 112. That doesn't make any sense to me. It's just it's Bill Belichickian and his ways. The offensive guards, I truly had no idea. Did you know either of these guys, Saidi Sow or Antonio Mafi?
Mafi. I'm trying to think. Was he the UCLA guy? Yeah,
he was the UCLA guy. So
I watched him. I watched a little bit of him because I also watched John Gaines. I like John Gaines quite a bit.
Yes.
So Mafi, I knew a little bit. Thought he was solid. Didn't watch a ton of him. Saidi Sow, absolutely not. Jake Andrews is a name I heard but hadn't watched because again, finding Troy film, not the easiest thing in the world. So
Jake Andrews was the center at the Senior Bowl when Keanu Benton like clubbed him and his helmet turned completely sideways. I told that story a couple months back. Yeah, that was Jake Andrews. So I was never really high on him after that moment, even though he was a solid player for Troy. But like you said, it's impossible to find Troy games.
Yeah, exactly. That's the problem. But yeah, the Patriots class as a whole, I think, we talked it beforehand. We talked about it beforehand. If you want to look at, potential steals, if the guy gets his head on straight, I think we all know that Kayshon Boutte can be an absolute monster for them.
Yeah.
Just big play receiver. Everybody thought, everyone had him at the sort of top 5 receivers in college football to start the season. And then just for whatever reason, it sounded as if there were character issues at LSU where he all of a sudden couldn't get on the field. When he did get on the field, he wasn't getting targets. And then he said he kind of surprised. Well, I can't say he surprised everyone. Surprised me saying he was going to return to school. And then like a week or two later, he's like, nope, never mind. I'm entering the draft. So it's like these are some weird circumstances. I don't know what's going on. But the guy, highly talented guy. If you can get somebody that late and roll the dice on him, why not? I didn't like picking up Marte Mapu, who we talked about. He was a guy I never even heard of till about 3 weeks before the draft. His name came up on a pod I was listening to, and then not long after that, I did an interview with Emory Hunt, and Emory Hunt mentioned him. So I went and looked for some of his games. Again, small school, had a really hard time finding anything on him. But when I did, what games I was able to find, he was all over the place. He was playing linebacker. He was playing safety. He was playing well at every spot. And you just look at those chess pieces and you think Bill Belichick, he's going to be somebody that'll, give you a hard time for years to come. So Mapu could be maybe the most impactful guy, at least early on, because I think they're going to find different ways to get him on the field. But the interior linemen from the small schools, I haven't watched them, can't really comment. But Demario Douglas, he was a guy that I mentioned when I wanted, when I was hoping for Jackson Smith and Jigba. I thought maybe Tank Dell or Demario Douglas could be nice alternatives as slot guys. And Douglas out of Liberty, I think, is a good player. Again, New England isn't the New England of old, so I think a lot of these guys are going to have a chance to get on the field, and we'll find out if Belichick, he's got a lot of bad draft classes that Tom Brady covered up for a lot of years. So we'll see what happens, but I do like a lot of guys in this class, but there are some guys I won't even pretend that I watched an O-lineman from Troy because it's just not out there.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of maybe telling that NFC or AFC East rivals of the Jets are going out and acquiring dumping premium assets into the cornerback position, maybe to stop somebody that wears number 8 in the green and white. But they went defense with their first 3 picks, corner, edge, linebacker, and I can see all 3 of them being impactful players in their year one. I think Christian Gonzalez is a little raw. We talked about his tackling a little bit, and I think that's something he'll have to improve on. But like we saw with Sauce Gardner, he wasn't the best tackler, but he's really good in other places too that make up for it. So who knows? I think that those top 3, though, that's really where the bread and butter of their draft class is.
Gonzalez, we can move on. Like we talked about beforehand. The knock on Gonzalez is that he's not a physical guy. If he can be a liability in run support, but he's primarily going to be asked to cover. If he can do that well, Belichick will be happy.
Yeah, and his ball skills are pretty good. I believe he had a career high when he transferred to Oregon in interceptions. So it's going to be cool. I mean, I think, it was a surprise that he was there at 17, especially after the trade back. So who knows? Like maybe he's actually really, really good, and he should have been picked in the top 10 like most mock drafts had.
A lot of people had him going there.
Yeah. All right, we can move on. Miami, I think, is the next worst. And I think Buffalo is right, the best of the 3. So Miami had a much shorter draft class. Cam Smith in the 2nd round, cornerback, South Carolina. Devon Achane, running back, Texas A&M. Elijah Higgins, wide receiver, converted tight end from Stanford. He was a Senior Bowl player. And Ryan Hayes, offensive tackle from Michigan, another Senior Bowl player in the 6th and 7th rounds. So small draft class, but I think they did really well at getting players who are going to contribute for their team. I mean, I look at Cam Smith, he's going to have a role right away. And I think that their secondary is really scary with Jalen Ramsey now in the fold, Javon Holland over at safety. They had Kader Kohu, their nickel guy. He came on late. I believe he was their nickel guy. He came on late. So, and then Devon Achane I talked about on the show. I love Devon. He was one of my, return specialists that you could get in the, early part of day 3, round 4. Obviously, that didn't really happen because teams fall in love with athletic ability and speed and upside. So he didn't make it there, but he was still a top 100 pick. And Elijah Higgins, he was a Senior Bowl guy who got a lot of reps with the wide receivers and tight ends, a big body guy. Everybody was obsessed with Michael Wilson, his Stanford teammate at the Senior Bowl. But Elijah Higgins did pretty well, too, against the safeties in the one-on-ones. And Ryan Hayes, I mean, he didn't really stick out to me, but a Michigan program, those tackles are going to be, their offensive linemen, rather, are going to be solid. It's like a Wisconsin light. So
Yeah.
What do you think of the Dolphins class?
Yeah, the same thing with you pick an offensive lineman from Michigan, you're going to get a guy, there's a good chance he can play. I know they were considered by a lot of people to be the best O-line in the country. So you can kind of, it's a safe, even if you're not sure what to do in that, in that spot, round 3, like, hey, just grab a lineman from Michigan or Wisconsin and see how it goes, and you got a good chance to hit on a late pick. But the big pick to me, or the small pick, Devon Achane, right? He's you add his speed to that huddle with the speed they already have.
Track team.
Yeah, I mean, we use that term, but he was a track star, and those guys can run, man. Tyreek Hill, track star. Those guys can absolutely fly. The one caveat is how many touches a game can you give a guy his size? There is some concern there. I know, I mentioned earlier the Draft Network. I remember them talking about him one day, and his pro comp was Dre Archer, who was very similar, very small back with elite speed, and he had like 40, 50 carries, and then he was out of the league or touches. So Achane, I mean, you can't, if you love football and you watch that guy play, you can't not love the way that no one else on the field can catch him when he gets in the open, when he gets behind a defense. And the way he's tough to get a good angle on because he just breaks angles because he's so fast. So I think he can be a really good player. Smith, I think, is a good corner. So not many picks for the Dolphins, but they did all right for themselves with the limited capital.
Yeah, I'm just looking at their hour lads, just their top 2, first and second stringers, Jalen Waddle, Tyreek Hill, Robbie Anderson. I'm going to call him Robbie. Raheem Mostert, Jeff Wilson, Devon Achane. Like, that's just speed. And I understand, we beat them last year when they had Teddy Bridgewater for one play, and then they beat us to end the season. But it's going to be a tough matchup. I mean, they have obviously guys that are familiar with our team: Mike White, Braxton Berrios, Dan Feeney, Tyler Croft is on the team too. If that makes any difference, but I think it's going to be a hell of a division, and the Dolphins are going to be neck and neck with everybody here. I think the Patriots were the odd one out, and I don't even want to say that confidently because the Patriots should never be the odd one out. All right, going back now to the draft. I lost it on the sheet. All right, I have Buffalo here on the thing. I'm not going to pull it up because I lost it on the screen share. They had 5 picks as well. They started off first round, Dalton Kincaid, tight end out of Utah. Second round, Osiris Torrance, guard out of Florida, who many thought was a first-round pick. Third round, Dorian Williams, linebacker, Tulane, who we love his coverage ability. Fifth round, Justin Shorter, wide receiver, Florida. And seventh round, Nick Broker, guard from Ole Miss. This is a home run. Like, I don't know how else to put it. These are guys I like. Every single one. I think the only one I told you I haven't, and you're putting him up here, is Justin Shorter.
This is just to show you the block on the outside from Shorter. Like, this is how physical he can get. He's up here on the outside, comes down inside, boom. Puts the DB on his back. Like, that's the guy you want. That's the guy you want blocking. If you want to be a big play offense, you want somebody like that in there. But yeah, home run class, probably the best in the division.
I think so.
Yeah, I mean, we talked during the season about willing to take Osiris Torrance when the Jets were supposed to be picking in the 20s. I would take him at 23 or 20. Like, I said at one point, I thought he might be the safest pick in this class. He's just that solid. He had some bad, I don't even want to say bad. If you watch him against Georgia, he had some reps where he got beat, but he's facing Jalen Carter, for God's sakes. Like, sometimes elite guys beat other elite guys. That's the way it goes. Dalton Kincaid, I forget what week I mentioned him. When we do our weekly mentions, he was a guy that I said I liked.
Early on. Yep.
Yeah, pretty early on. Osiris Torrance, as I said, we talked about him as a possible first-round pick. Dorian Williams, probably watched less of him than any of the Bills picks. Well, and Alex Austin. I didn't watch a lot of Alex Austin, but I did watch a fair bit of Justin Shorter. I did watch a fair bit of Nick Broker from Mississippi, who I liked. I thought he would go earlier than 7. I think he's a guy, and he was a Senior Bowl guy, wasn't he, Broker? I'm sure he was.
Yes, Broker was.
Yeah, I
Yep.
thought he was. Yeah, he's a guy that I kind of thought would be a mid-rounder, potential starter. He ends up going in the 7th. So really, the Bills, 3, 4, 5 guys who I think will play and play well. They had a really good class, and a lot of those guys can play early on.
Yeah, right now they don't have Torrance as a starter on our lads. They have left to right Deion Dawkins, Connor McGovern, Mitch Morse, Ryan Bates, Spencer Brown, and then they have Torrance behind Ryan Bates at right guard. So that's a camp battle that potentially he could win and become the outright starter by week 1. And I think that's very, very within the realm of possibility for him. Nick Broker, yeah, was another guy I thought slid. He was getting mocked in like the
shorter in there on a deep ball. Go ahead, sorry.
Mm-hmm. No, you're fine. The Broker I felt was more of the late day 2 range, maybe early day 3 at the latest. So to get him in the 7th round as maybe a developmental guy for them. Yeah, I mean, they're going to dedicate a lot of 12 personnel usage this year with Dawson Knox and Dalton Kincaid now. So we're going to have to, get creative on how we adjust to covering those guys. I mean, I think we see what happens sometimes when Michael Carter II goes up against larger tight ends. He doesn't have the most success. So you're gonna have to see. We're gonna have to get some coverage linebackers. It would have been nice to have a Dorian Williams to make these linebackers a little bit, or tight ends a little bit easier to cover. We have Zaire Barnes. I don't know if he's a great coverage linebacker. I still think they need to add Quan Alexander, but it's going to be a new look Bills team. They're definitely going to be a very run the ball downhill, down your throat type of team. And it looks like they're building a team to be that, even though they have Josh Allen. They look like they're getting bigger, physical, looking ready to run the ball.
Yeah, they absolutely. And they're going to be, as I said, they were already considered the best team in the division by a lot of folks. And they just got better. Obviously the Jets got a lot better too, but solid class for Buffalo, tip your cap and hopefully the Jets. And the thing you mentioned though, about covering the tight ends, like, the Jets are going to have to find a way, because right now, again, the week of the draft, between our show and hopping on with Play Like a Jet and hopping on with Dom and just I forget where I said what, but the middle of the defense it's my biggest concern right now. Like, I don't know that CJ Mosley. I don't know if CJ Mosley is the guy you want, covering a tight end if a team is able to, create that matchup. Or if a guy, if the safeties, we don't know much about these safeties. We know Whitehead struggled last year, and it's let's see, it's my biggest concern, other than QB2. QB2 is a huge concern for me for this team, and the middle of the field on defense is a big concern for me. And hopefully neither of those things turn out to be issues. But Barnes is an interesting guy. He is very athletic, very explosive. I posted a play against a couple plays, actually. It's funny. I found a game against Pitt, and I hate when this happens, when you turn on a game to watch a specific prospect, and he literally, like, the first 2 or 3 snaps, like, made wow plays. Like, oh, this is going to be great. Oh, wow. And he's, like, quiet for the rest of the game. Like, tackle here, but, like, no wow plays. But you just saw the explosion. It was a swing pass to Abanikanda, and he recognized it and just exploded into the backfield. Abanikanda sort of was trying to double catch it, and Barnes just took out his legs, blew him up, and the ball fell incomplete. So he's an explosive guy. He's an athletic guy. He's long, so maybe he can be that cover guy. And I think sometimes, and we're all guilty of it, especially if it's a player we haven't seen a ton of, we just assume, like, well, haven't seen him, 5th, 6th rounder, he's going to be a backup. Well, maybe not.
Right.
Maybe he plays.
Exactly.
Maybe he steals some snaps from Quincy Williams. I think that would be a good thing to have, a good development. So we'll see what happens. But as of right now, covering the tight ends is a concern.
Yeah, that'll definitely be one to watch. I think I'm very vocal in my let's re-sign Quan Alexander, and perhaps that's not even a thought for them. And
But
you
is he
mentioned,
even a cover guy though? Like, can we say he's a
sure,
cover guy?
yeah, right.
You know,
Not
I like
it's hard
Quan,
to,
and I
yeah,
think he will be back. It feels like he will,
it's hard to put him in that bucket though as a coverage guy though for
and
sure. I
that's
just
the
consider him a
elite.
spark plug of the
Yeah,
defense and
I
like
like him a lot. Yeah,
exactly, yeah.
he just
But
doesn't fill the need we're talking about. I guess is my
right.
point. Yeah.
And in the middle of the field, talking about the safeties, the two names that jump out to me, I think, would probably be Adrian Amos. I don't know if they love the safety play that happened in Green Bay between him and Savage. Maybe he's not on their radar. And then I think John Johnson, he's out there still. So there are some names, but yeah,
And
I think it goes back to what we said. Tony Adams is probably going to get a lot of run in this defense. And Will Parks, I know he has special teams upside, but I think
I'll tell
they're
you
going to
what.
rely on Will Parks against these tight ends potentially too.
I'll tell you what though. Again, who knows what the hell's going to happen? UDFA. But when you get a chance, watch Marquise Waters, the Texas Tech undrafted free agent.
Okay.
He's a guy. I watched a couple of his games, and I was like, God, it seems like he's lining up all over the place. This guy. So luckily, see, this is where PFF can be useful, right? Because we always, PFF is garbage. I love using PFF for stuff like this. I'm like, I feel like this guy's lining up everywhere. And I pull up his PFF game logs, and he's got a couple hundred snaps at inside linebacker, a couple hundred snaps at outside linebacker, 100+ snaps at nickel. So he is lining up, covering all over the place, and playing at a high level. So much so that again, he's one of those guys you look at and think nobody took a 7th-round flyer on a guy that can play inside, outside, nickel, athletic. Um,
Mhm.
so again, based on the need, like you talk about, looking at UDFAs and who might make the roster and who might not. Of course, you're looking at need, like Trey Dean. He's a safety. They need safety help. Marquise
Yeah.
Waters plays safety and linebacker. He can be, again, a sort of a backup at a couple of different spots. So there
Mhm.
are some guys to keep an eye on out of this UDFA class. Marquise Waters, probably the guy I was least familiar with, but watched a few of his games last week, and thought his versatility and his explosiveness. He's a guy that maybe sticks.
Yeah, I think the general fan consensus on Twitter seems to be that Jason Brownlee is going to be the UDFA that everybody's excited for this season. But I don't necessarily think that that's going to be the guy. There's plenty of them. I think they signed 13. So
That's
Marquise
the
Waters, I'm
thing.
excited, and he fits a need, like you said, safety. So if he can do other
And they added
things
a
where,
lot of linebackers. Like, I think
yeah,
one of them sticks. I think they
yeah,
feel like,
exactly,
we're sitting here talking about how linebacker is a concern for us. They added what? I think they signed 3 linebackers. And
three,
Malik Hall they added. They added Caleb Johnson, who played for Miami, and Claudin Cherilus.
yeah,
Cherilus, to me, I can't remember who I found. I watched one of his games in full, and he was an absolute monster. Of course, he's playing at a smaller school, lower level competition, but great motor and just anticipation, getting into the backfield, had a bunch of tackles for loss. I think he had 1 or 2 sacks. So he really looked like a player. And they're bringing in 3 guys that play linebacker as UDFAs. They're bringing in some safeties, and these are guys who have a shot to stick. And I think, these receivers, Xavier Gibson, right? Return man, super explode,
mhm.
like looks like he could be a slot guy. Brownlee, I think, could be a guy who challenges somebody like Mims. So some of these guys, I think we might see 4 guys stick.
Yeah, and that's not to say that they will have impact roles from
No,
the
no,
get,
like
but
they'll
but that goes to show where the roster is, that it's in a place where they're not reliant on these young guys anymore, but they can still use these young guys in developmental roles now. Where if we like, I feel like Jets fans, we've been so focused on actually trying to win a damn football game that we never had a developmental guy on the roster that we've sit and like let them learn the team and everything and then become a starter in year 2 or 3. And Tony
Mhm.
Adams, Marquise Waters, all those linebackers. Fred Warner was a 3rd-round pick for Robert Saleh, and he groomed him to be the best linebacker in the league. I'm not saying Zaire Barnes is on that same career trajectory, but
Right.
Robert Saleh knows what he's doing at the position. So, I think we feel a little uncomfortable about it, but the perception could be completely different inside the building with the position. So, I'm excited to see how it shakes out. I think camp's going to be fun. If you can peel your eyes away from Aaron Rodgers at camp to watch the linebacker battle, the running back battle, obviously the safety battle, and the tackle battle. I think those are the 4 non-quarterback positions in camp that are really going to, be challenging because there's a lot of players there that we don't know what their roles are going to be. All right. With that, do you want to touch on the Albert Breer article real quick?
Yeah, just briefly. Like I said, I read it the day it came out.
Yeah, same. One
Which
of
is a few days
three of
ago.
the same articles. It's an exclusive article that Hughes, Samini, Domofsky, and Albert Breer all had similar,
Yeah,
tastes,
but
flavors
Breer,
of.
to me, Breer, and I tweeted out a few weeks ago, like, I can't wait till this is all done and we get Albert Breer's version of what happened, because
Right.
he's the best. He's sort of like the low key guy that he doesn't get enough attention because he doesn't break a lot of news, but when he does break news, like, and he spells it out and draws out, shows you how everything unfolded. I just think he's the best at that.
Hmm.
I know Connor and Samini, and I didn't know the other guy had one. But Breer is my go-to when it comes to stuff like this.
Hmm.
And the things that jumped out at me, the first positive that I liked that and we talk. I mean, I'm pretty sure I mentioned this when during the season. If the Jets get Aaron Rodgers, this might be the thing that helps Zach Wilson. And he said Wilson was on board at the end of the season when the Jets said they would get a vet. Wilson understood.
Hmm.
Which is good, shows some maturity, but was excited when he heard it was going to be Rodgers. That's like, if this doesn't work for Zach Wilson, nothing was going to. The Jets are doing the 100% right thing by Zach Wilson to say, we're not going to dump you. We're not going to trade you. I mean, he doesn't have any value right now anyway, if we're being honest. But not only are we going to work with you, we're bringing in the guy who you grew up watching and emulated, and he's going to sit in front of you and like talk you through things, and you're going to learn from him. There is no better way. If this doesn't work, you can't tell me there was another way to get it to work for Zach Wilson. This
Yeah.
is it. So he's excited. That's awesome. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just gonna say, and I don't want to come across weird with this, but even Zach Wilson's mom on Instagram loved the move and was posting about how, pictures of Zach and Aaron in the joint practices and when we went to Lambeau and them talking and this and that. So she wouldn't post that if he wasn't cool with it. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it was cool to see that, almost like a confirmation that
Yeah.
he's cool with it. He's just going to sit back. The whole I'm going to make his life practice or a practice life
Make it like
hell every
hell.
day. And then
Well, he
Rodgers
didn't know it was going to be Aaron Rodgers. I mean,
and then Rodgers almost made it weirder by saying, I'm going to make his life off the field heaven. Like, I think that could just go into total, like, many different ways that you don't know what he's thinking exactly. So it's just very weird messaging from those two. But yeah, they give them a week or two together. There was a rumor that they were playing golf the other day together. I don't know if it's true. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, but they're going to bond. Rodgers is
yeah.
going to bond with the team, and Zach Wilson is going to be a part of that. Jordan Love was a part of Rodgers, mentoring. He was mentoring Jordan Love the entire time. Josh Allen even said on a recent interview that Aaron Rodgers has reached out to him a handful of times via text message just to, give pointers and talk ball and this and that. So Aaron Rodgers is very connected with all these young quarterbacks, and it's probably the best thing for Zach Wilson's career is to just stay here, learn, and hopefully you could be the guy. And if not, maybe you get paid somewhere else to go be that guy and you get that opportunity. But yeah, I definitely agree. That's definitely a positive. Were there any negatives that you wanted to point out specifically, or were you just saying that was a positive?
No, that was the first thing in the article I think that jumped
Okay.
out as being positive. The only thing, I mean, a lot of it, I've my thoughts on the compensation are well documented. I thought the Jets overpaid.
Mm-hmm.
I still think that when you only have one person willing to buy your product, that person has some leverage, and the Jets they gave their leverage away. They basically, the Jets acted like they were, like courting a girl, and to prove their loyalty to her wouldn't even take a phone number off another girl. Like, the Jets could have leaked that they called about Stafford. The Jets could have leaked that they were mulling internally about Lamar Jackson, just to put the thought in the Packers' head, like, hey, if we play this wrong, we don't have another buyer. And that was the key thing that Breer drove home. Or not that he drove home, but jumped out at me. He confirmed what, I mean, listen, I said many times that I thought Craig Carton was full of it. That these Twitter reporters who were saying there were mystery teams getting involved, I said they were full of it. And they all were. They were all lying. They were all trying to get clicks.
Mm-hmm.
Breer confirmed. The Packers called around. The only team that said we will take Aaron Rodgers was the Jets. That's it. They had one customer, one buyer, and it would have been best for them to say, all right, guys, Aaron wants us. We want Aaron. Packers have no other buyers, and they owe him $100 million if we don't make this deal. So let's let it be known that we're talking to Stafford and we're talking to and get them. But instead, the Jets went, no, we promise we won't talk to any. They gave away all the leverage they had, and that's how the Packers were able to say, we don't need a first rounder to make this happen, but we got one anyway because the Jets the Jets gave them more than what even the Packers said was required. I know there's people, but the Packers wanted 2 1s and 5 3s and that. That's fine. You can want that, but nobody's stupid enough to think that was going to happen.
Right.
So the Jets were the only buyer. They did give away their leverage by not by not throwing any other names out there and staying loyal to the Rodgers idea, which is frustrating because, as I've said, I've done a couple where I've said, and I said the night of the trade, right? Happy where they are, not happy with how they got there. I thought they could have played it better, got them for less, but they didn't. But the thing that made me cringe, where I was a little bit nauseous, was when, Breer says, Joe Douglas needed another win to bring to Woody Johnson. So when he got the Packers to give up a 5 for a 6, he knew it was done. I was like, a 5 for that's your big win?
Yeah.
That's your big moment, like running to Woody Johnson's office. We got a 5th.
Yeah, they moved up 37 picks in the draft. Woo!
Yeah. Oh, and by the way, we're also flipping 1s, and they're getting the higher of the 2s. And they didn't want a 1, but we're giving them 1 anyway. And so, I know, listen, it's a happy time for Jets fans, and they don't want anything that sounds negative and, raining on anyone's parade. But, fact of the matter is the Jets, they gave Green Bay just about everything. No, they didn't give up, 2 1s and 3 3s. But that was the other part of it. They said the Packers wanted to model the Stafford deal. Stafford was like 6 years younger at the time of his trade. Yeah. They were getting a potential 5+ year quarterback. The Jets are getting a potential 2+ year quarterback. Right. Like those things matter, but people just think Aaron Rodgers, Hall of Fame, first rounder, fair. That's it. They don't look at but they had no other options, and he is 40, and he did just have his worst year in like 10 years. None of that. Nobody wants to hear that. They just think Hall of Famer, first rounder, done. Surface level stuff. Let's not dig deep as to why it happened. I was going over it with some guys on Jet Nation the other day, and that, everyone's all for it, and I'm an idiot because I wanted the Jets to give up less. But I'm not going to, even if they win a Super Bowl, that doesn't mean this deal couldn't have happened for less. Like, it makes it more worth it, and you care less about the picks they gave up. But like, what happens in the future doesn't change like what happened with the actual trade, which was they gave away their leverage and had to give up more capital.
Yeah, and to put context to the whole thing of Joe Douglas raising his hand, being the only one to raise his hand, I thought that whole timeline was pretty unique. Rodgers and Brian Gutekunst, the Packers GM, were supposed to meet in Los Angeles during the NFL Collegiate Bowl, and it didn't happen. And then there was another meeting that they tried to put together in person, and it didn't happen. And then Gutekunst was quietly, this is a direct quote from Breer, Gutekunst quietly started to gauge interest in Rodgers from other people he trusted with other teams, careful both in whom he talked to and how he phrased the question. It went something like this: I don't know if he's going to play or retire or play with us or someone else, but just so I know, if he wants to move on, would you be interested? Joe Douglas was the only person to raise his hand and say yes. So, I mean, it makes me nervous, obviously. I don't know why it's like phrased as though Goot was like going behind the league's back, it seemed like.
Well, I don't know.
It's just behind Aaron's back so that it wouldn't get back to Aaron.
I think, plausible deniability and being able to say, we're not shopping him. We didn't call and offer Aaron to anyone. Because then he would be telling
what he did at the owners' meeting. Yep.
Yeah, all he said was, hey, if Aaron decides he wants, would you be interested? That's not shopping. That's just asking some questions. So I think that's probably why he worded it that way. But yeah, I mean, I'm not going to make too much of a mockery of it. But I mean, of all these, and again, this is where age comes in, right? Age. Everyone seems to understand that there are factors that play into this stuff. When only one team wanted Lamar Jackson, the Ravens, it was like, oh, he's a former MVP. Look at all this collusion. And like, then you have a guy who's won 2 in the last, 3-4 years, and only one team wanted him, the Jets. And everyone's like, yeah, that's cool.
Well, that was what I was about to ask is like, do you actually believe that the Jets were the only ones that wanted Aaron Rodgers? Yeah. Or it's very weird because in a normal like landscape of the league, you would think there'd be 15 teams lining up for a 2-time MVP in the last 3 years and whatnot. And it was just maybe it was the contract. I don't know, but it was just very weird.
That's what I mean. It's you're inheriting $100 million in contract and giving up, again, whatever they were asking for from other teams, 1 or 2 1s, whatever. Like I said at the outset, I'm not giving up any 1s for a guy who's got a year, And again, as I said a million times, you approach it like it's a year because you don't know that it will be more than that. It now looks like it will be at least 2, which is at least this, makes the deal slightly better.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not giving up first rounders for any guy who's playing a year or two. Like your first round picks are viewed as 10-year starters. When you start giving up ones for a 1-year rental, 2-year rental, that's crazy. And that's why you don't see it. Like I said that a few times. People that were defending it, I'm like, show me the other player, because Hall of Fame players have been traded at different times in their career. Show me a Hall of Fame player that got traded for 2 1s and a 2 and a pick and a player when they had a year or 2 left in their career. And it just doesn't happen.
Right.
Until now.
Yeah, it's until now. And I think that is the precedent that is now set, because people are going to use this trade now for future quarterback trades. And they're going to say, well, Aaron Rodgers was 39 when he got traded. Come take these 35-plus-year-old quarterbacks. What's that?
That's why the Jets should have used the Favre trade and said that was a 39-year-old future Hall of Fame 39-year-old quarterback.
Yeah, and I'm sure that's probably where they started. The Packers were at the Stafford trade, and the Jets were at the Favre trade, and they tried to meet in the middle. It didn't really end up that way. It ended up
98% of the way toward the Packers. Right. But that is the other thing that was so shocking to me, and I think anyone who even supported the trade. I mean, listen, some people won't admit anything negative about whatever, but I don't know anyone that can honestly say having the condition tied, having nothing to do with performance, was shocking. Like, that's
what I was hung up on.
Every single person was like, if they make the playoffs, if they win a playoff game, if they go to the Super Bowl, like it becomes a 1.
Yep.
Win the division. No performance. I mean, listen, if this unfolds like the Favre season, like the ultimate nightmare scenario, they start out 8-3, Rodgers gets dinged up, they lose 4 out of 5, they miss the playoffs, the Packers get a first round pick, and maybe he's like, oh man, I'm done with this, I'm leaving. Like, you give up a 1 for nothing. You give up a 1 to get 8 or 9 wins. I don't think that's what's going to happen. As I said, they're going 17-0. We've already established that.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying. The risk, and that's the other part of it. That's why I thought the Jets would protect themselves against something like that by saying, like, to me, even a 2 for 60% of the snaps, that's not good. Like, that's a 2 for just over half of the snaps. It should have been, if you wanted it to be, playing time shouldn't have been on the table. It should have been either about, it should have been an MVP. If he gets an MVP vote, one MVP. Well, no, because then Belichick would have voted for him for the MVP. If he gets,
everybody would have,
the Packers and the Packers and the Patriots, so would have 3. If he gets 3 MVP votes, you get a 1. If he throws 30 touchdown passes, you get a 2. If we make the playoffs, you get a 2. But he shows up to work most of the time, and you get a 1. That's crazy.
Yeah, that and the pick swap, I think, were the sticking points for me personally as far as my displeasure for the trade. But that's not to take away from the 17-0 that we talked about earlier. We don't want to end on a negative note.
Listen, opening week 1, Aaron Rodgers throws his first touchdown pass. You think I'm going to give a damn about the draft compensation that day?
Nope. Especially if they win.
They missed the playoffs, and we're looking at round 1 next year.
Sure. Then it's acceptable if we get to the end of the season. Yeah, I was going to say, if we get to the end of the season and we aren't in the bracket come January, sure, we can have that conversation. But I think most Jets fans just got to relax a little bit, just take it easy. We have the whole summer to debate, to go into these hypotheticals, and they've already started. If you want a great place to get into these hypotheticals, the forums over at jetnation.com. They're the spot. I think you can find a topic on just about anything, draft-related, Jets-related. It's just crazy. You can go down so many wormholes with that forum. Glenn, you're always on there. You hype it up constantly. I'm going to hype it up here. I'm also going to plug our Twitter accounts. Glenn has a new handle. He is no longer at AceFan23. He is now at JNRadio_Glenn. That is Glenn with 2 N's. You can follow his Jets draft account at Jets Picks, at Jets PICKS. He has already started putting out 2024 prospects. He's put out all the UDFA highlights. I'm pretty sure every single draft pick has already been highlighted multiple times on that draft account. So go follow that one, Jets PICKS. You can follow me on Twitter at D Tereman. You can follow Jet Nation on all social media platforms, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter. We probably have a MySpace if you want to go find that one too. We appreciate everybody in the comment section tonight. Everybody seems to be in love with the schedule. The primetime games are a little hit or miss, but we'll dive deep into all that. We know our week 1 opponent is the Buffalo Bills. Let's prepare for them. Let's kick Josh Allen's butt. Start the season 1-0. Until next time, let's go Jets.